afternoon, and welcome to this WIO Wednesday webinar. My name is Brittany Boston, and I am with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Today's topic is careers in demand, pivoting in a pandemic, and really focusing on upskilling in a virtual world. So as a reminder, as a participant on the call today, you are in listen-only mode. So if you have questions or comments throughout the webinar, please feel free to put those into the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will either address those at the end or throughout the webinar. This webinar is also being recorded. The presentation, recording, and any materials that are presented and shared during today's webinar will be made available on the ICSPS website as well as the Illinois WorkNet website within 48 hours of the live webinar. And at the end of the webinar, as well as tomorrow, each attendee will receive a follow-up email, which will include a survey asking you about today's webinar. So we please ask that you provide feedback and any suggestions you have to help us improve the upcoming webinars. If you have any audio issues or internet connection issues, please feel free to use the call-in feature, and you can find that number in your original registration email. And so with that, we are going to start out with a couple of polling questions just to get a feel for who is in the audience today. So where is your local area? So I will give it a few seconds to allow everyone to answer. We'll do about 5 more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share our results here. A lot of Central Illinois, Northern, Southern, so some great representation. And then the next question we have is, which partner do you represent? We'll give it a few more seconds here. Lots of participation on these polls. That's great. Okay, I will close this. We have a lot of Title I, some other WIOA partners and stakeholders. So again, some full representation from all parties here. Okay, so thank you so much for participating on those. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenters for today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brittany. I know that Kirsten is also in your organization, and anything you want, we covered the kind of local areas that you guys are coming from. Really cool that everyone's from all over Illinois. So thank you all for joining today. It's one of the benefits of really training digitally, right? We don't have to all come and make our way in the snow to Chicago. We can just jump on our computers and be here together today. So thank you for that. Anything you want to cover here, Brittany?
Nope, that was just another little graphic for the other polling question, just to show kind of the different representation we may have.
Wonderful, great. Well, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off first to Tanil to introduce herself, and then we'll work our way down.
Hi, so glad to be here today. My name is Tanil Smith. I am the Vice President of Career Access and Workforce Development for Skills for Chicagoland's Future. I oversee our college to career, career pathways, training and development, and workforce solutions. So thanks for having us today.
Thanks, Tanil. I'm Nicole Yavicevic. 10 points if you can get the last name. I am the Senior Manager of Career Access and Training and Development. My focus really is helping all of the training programs that we have, whether that's with employers or with our community-based organizations or schools, or even some of our internal programming, making sure that's all running smoothly and, helping it transition during COVID-19. So I'm really excited to share some insights of what we've learned as we've pivoted during the pandemic, and hopefully that will be very helpful for you guys today and will be a worthwhile hour. So Mike, you're up next.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Thompson, Manager of Business and Workforce Solutions at Skills for Chicagoland's Future. I mostly focus on a lot of our grant compliance as well as labor market research into seeing where opportunity is around the state. Glad to be here and happy to help out any way I can.
Yep, and as Brittany noted in the chat, some of the closed captioning is a bit delayed and a bit sporadic. So there will be a recorded version that will be posted after within 48 hours that will have the full closed captioning. So thank you for your patience as the technology catches up with our live speech. All right, so who is Skills, right? So you see the logo on our screens, but Skills is really a business intermediary that focuses on an employer-first approach. We try and see what do employers need, who are they looking for, what are their talent needs, and then we go into the communities and partner with community-based organizations and recruit around the south and west sides of Chicago to help really employ these individuals into jobs that match their skill sets, but also help employers match their talent needs. So at this time, we've, since our founding, we've had over 100 employer partners. We've had over 8,100 placements to date. And as you can see on the right side, we serve pretty much all of Chicagoland with a heavy emphasis on the south and west side. A lot of our individuals have mostly a high school diploma or a GED, but we do serve individuals with varying educational backgrounds. And of course, the majority of people that we serve are African American individuals and Hispanic and Latinx individuals. And our age range is generally within the 16 to 24 range, but 55% competing around halfway there is 25 plus. So especially during the pandemic, I'm sure those numbers are going to start to shift as we continue to aggregate that data. So last week we covered people transferring skills to new employment opportunities. So if you had a chance to jump on there, if not, please go to the recording, but they have some great resources where we talk about what does the data show for what opportunities are open right now. It's really important to look at what the hiring trends are because there are many people who maybe were laid off from, for example, hospitality, who are thinking they want to go back into hospitality and need money now. Maybe then the approach to helping them find those transferable skills is to help them find something outside of hospitality so they can make those ends meet. So if you haven't taken a look, there's some great tools and resources and data that we shared in that first presentation. Today, we are covering process. So how do we upskill in a virtual world? I don't know about you, but I'm on Zoom calls back to back all day. And I'm sure our participants are lacking a little bit in that in-person kind of connection, but there is so much to be said about virtual training and I'm a huge fan. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. I would also make sure to reserve your calendar for next week because we will be covering partnerships, how to navigate employer relationships. So I'm really looking forward to sharing what we have today, but make sure to also reserve your time for the next session. Anything else before I go on to Neil or Mike? Great, okay. So processing, what are we covering today, right? We're gonna define and reframe our personal narratives about virtual learning because it always starts with us when it comes to how we're working with other people. So we're going to start with that. There are going to be some polls. We're going to talk. I'm personally a big fan of putting things in the chat. So if you're on your phone, there's going to be 3 little dots in the corner and you're going to want to click those 3 dots and click chat. And that's going to allow you to send messages to us. There might be an option for all panelists and attendees versus all panelists. Make sure you're on all panelists and attendees if you have that option. If you're on your computer, of course, there is either an option to have it on the bottom, it should say chat, or you might have to exit full screen and then the chat will show up on the right side of your screen. So a couple of different troubleshooting options, but make sure you know how to access it so we can engage during that first part. So the next part is going to be clarifying the 5 core skills and resources necessary to become a successful virtual learner. And it can, this is pretty an overwhelming topic. I'm pretty sure we could spend a full, 2 weeks on it, but we do want to simplify it down so it can be bite-sized and so that we can articulate it and take action and to resolve it and find solutions for it. Speaking of, we're going to share those effective solutions to support clients with the virtual learning transition. Whether we like it or not, half of our role now is to help individuals learn how to navigate the virtual space, because there is going to be virtual interviews. And so whether they're working with you or with an employer, virtual is not going away anytime soon. And the final part we'll cover today is we're going to explore program and trainer preparation needed to successfully host virtual training and coaching. So something to think about always, right, is how do we perceive it? That's step 1. But that last part, I really want you to think about how you're preparing and how you're hosting your programs or your coaching for your clients. Because if we are thinking innovatively about how to make online easier, and if we become the experts, then suddenly it becomes more manageable for our clients to do well in a virtual world. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start first with reframing our narrative around virtual offerings. So without further ado, Brittany, would you please launch the poll for what percentage of your offerings are currently virtual right now? So we have 90 to 100% where pretty much everything, all of it. 50 to 80% where the majority of it is virtual, 21 to 49% where less than half of your offerings are virtual, and less than 20%, which is really few, if any, of our programs are online. All right.
Yeah, so you guys should be able to answer that poll now. So I will leave it up there for a few more seconds.
Beautiful. See the results coming in.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and end and share our results.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Great. So it looks like about 57% or about 38 of you guys have most or all of your offerings virtually right now. Not super surprising, definitely a good pivot for COVID-19, but definitely a challenge I know you guys had to overcome. So thank you for putting in that additional effort to do that. And an additional 14 of you guys have about 50 to 80%. So maybe some of them are not, whether they're on pause or whether they're in person. And then 8 and 7 of you guys are within the 21 to 49% or less than 20%. So it looks like there is a handful of people who have not transitioned things virtually right now. Hopefully, for those of you guys who are beginners, this will be a good summary and a good first step into trying to consider what we need to think about when we're transitioning to virtual. And for those of you guys who are already virtual and kind of transitioned right with the pandemic, hopefully this will be a good resource for you guys to think even more critically about how to improve your virtual offerings and continue to improve upskilling in a virtual world. Thank you so much, Brittany. All right, so the next thing I want to think about, right? What are the cons? And this is where I'm going to ask you guys to use the chat. What are kind of like the cons or the negatives of participating in virtual training or having to do virtual training for our offerings and our clients? So please at this point use the chat. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to maybe write 1 or 2 ideas of what are the kind of the cons of training virtually. Not being able to be face-to-face, absolutely. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, eliminating that face-to-face interaction. Thank you. All right, digital divide and not being able to view body language. Absolutely, that body language is a huge thing. Felicia, thank you for saying proper technology. Absolutely, it's a necessary now bottom line. Thank you. What else do we have? Needing documents signed and going through Adobe Sign. Yes, I swear that's like suddenly you're like adding in all these new technologies to make sure it's wonderful and connected, but it's definitely a new thing and a new challenge. Let's see, everyone does not have the capacity or resources. Yeah, some organizations or some individuals do not have the capacity or resources to participate in a virtual one-on-one kind of coaching environment or group environment. Clients lacking technology, It gets boring and home life gets in the way of training when it's online. Absolutely. If you guys hear my cats trying to, infiltrate this meeting, it's the realities of home life. And I don't have children right now. And it's even more challenging when you have kids at home trying to do e-learning. So there's a lot that gets in the way, both for us as well as for our clients. And it also does get boring, right? I'm seeing my boyfriend every single day forever since the pandemic. Definitely testing relationships. Great. One con is how difficult it is to teach hands-on skills. Yeah. So how do you visually show them? But at the end of the day, some people are tactile learners, so that can definitely be a challenge. Let's see. Investment in new technology. Yep. And trying to figure out how to onboard that technology. The technology is not always reliable, hence, like we talked about, the closed captions. Less personal contact. Okay, great. I'm scrolling through a couple of these, so if I don't call out yours personally.
Yeah, Nicole, I think the other big thing that I'm reading is building relationships. It's hard to have that networking and relationship building, through Zoom and through chat.
Absolutely. Mike, did you want to add anyone?
Yeah, I was going to say, I did notice someone that put the hands on, and I was curious from the poll if those who hadn't transitioned to virtual, if they were in more of a technical space where they needed to be, where they need to have a physical presence.
Yeah, great question. If you guys want to clarify any of that in the chat, please do. But generally some themes, like you guys said, the face-to-face, the technology, both for us and clients. We have the relationship building, that kind of non-tangible of being physically in person, and just being at home and the barriers of not being in a physical space, and communication challenges. So you guys definitely caught on to some of the key cons that we can all kind of list off in our day-to-day. And let's see, Jennifer said, yes, I work in a career and technical education. Everything is hands-on. Absolutely.
So yeah, those CTE, as you say, career and technical education roles, they're working with machines sometimes. They're learning the basic skills for, repair and maintenance. So yeah, those are things that are a little bit harder to take into a virtual world.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it just has to be in person and we have to adapt to social distancing. All right, so and maybe we can utilize technology, but let's think about then the positives. What are kind of the pros, right? Because your mindset is going to be important when it comes to upskilling virtually. If you don't like upskilling virtually, they're going to know it from your tone and body language and how you communicate. So let's get the pros, right? Let's reframe ourselves. Let's think about the positives, what's coming really good out of this pandemic. Okay, flexibility. Yes, thanks, Janice. My 5-second commute. Absolutely. Out of bed, into the desk, or onto the table, wherever you are, onto the couch, wherever the home office is. Still getting things done. Absolutely. We are still checking off those boxes. We're still upskilling individuals. We're still making sure they're making progress with their resumes and their LinkedIns and job applications. If you can't find childcare, you can still attend. Absolutely. Yes. And time saving helps more people in a shorter amount of time. Yes, we can definitely increase the amount of people we see. Easier for clients with transportation challenges. Yeah, so it's not just our 5-second commute, it's their 5-second commute as well, right? Instead of having to go all the way downtown or all the way to your office, they're able to do it from home. Ability to grow in the technology world, ability to multitask, right? If someone's training and you're in the background, you can do something else. Great. We had to adapt to technology, which led to increased flexibility. Working from home has decreased expenses. I am more productive in the home space. Yeah. So maybe if you're at home and you're able to focus more, that actually increases your flexibility and your focus. Great. Technology. So the ability to actually do it. So we had to invest in it, whether we liked it or not. Lack of transportation is no longer an obstacle, saving gas money. And I've actually had an increase, Jennifer, thank you. Yes, I've had an increase in attendance for some events because of the flexibility of doing virtual events. I can absolutely agree with that. For our participants, we are actually finding more people are attending info sessions, and we're finding more people are continuing to persist through programs because that transportation is not as big of a barrier, because that childcare is not as big of a barrier, and we're able to be flexible with how people interact and participate within their home. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Absolutely. And then greater outreach to individuals with disabilities. Yes. So let's say I have a disability, I can't leave my home, or it's very difficult for me to leave my home. Now I can just participate and actually get these resources that otherwise, you know, I have to get myself out of bed and get all the way to the office. And that might be all the energy I had for that day, or it might be very painful. Absolutely. So thank you guys for sharing. You know, you guys got a lot of the trends, right? One of the things is digital literacy for our clients. This is a huge thing because it is going to help our clients to know, how do I log into Zoom? How do I make sure my camera looks right? How do I rename myself if I, you know, have a silly name from a family Zoom or from just that I typed in? What kind of impact does it have if I capitalize my name or not? How do I troubleshoot if my audio or video is lagging? All of those things are things, one, we need to learn, but also that our clients need to learn. And that digital literacy is a huge benefit to actually going online, and it's going to help them. The other thing is increased access and options due to flexible location. So you guys already covered this, but this really, it's going to provide access. You don't need to go to the office right around the corner or right around from where you live. You don't need to go to a college or a school that's right around your corner. You're now able to expand what options you had available to you. And so that's actually going to be a huge benefit to our clients, I think, long term. There's low risk to practice for self-motivation. We're going to talk a little bit later. Hint, one of the 5 core pillars is self-motivation, but low risk practice for it, right? If I show up to my training or not, it's not going to, you know, I'm not going to get fired. I'm not going to lose a huge part of my earnings. It's actually a safe space for me to practice that. And then practice setting aside uninterrupted time to focus and participate. This is a skill, right? Just like interviewing is a skill, and you have to learn how to answer behavioral-based questions or open-ended questions. Learning how to do this virtually is a skill, and setting aside time is a skill. And then it opens more opportunity for low commitment volunteering. What I found, you know, when we used to do volunteering in person, it was a little challenging because if people are working a 9 to 5, in order to volunteer, they have to come to our offices. Now we're able to just say, hey, sign up for this great free training. They just have to log on during their lunch hour or during that hour that we have the volunteering opportunity, and then they're able to leave and go back to work. It opens up so many more resources in terms of volunteers. I highly recommend that you take a look at that if you have not already. So as we've kind of started thinking about all the benefits, and we started thinking about why this is actually a positive thing that we should be excited about, let's also talk about, you know, what does your future look like? You said right now a lot of your offerings are virtual, but Brittany, let's launch the next poll where we talk about whether you're thinking about doing in-person, virtual, or blended learning. So does your future look like, as soon as you can, I'm going back to 100% in person? Do you think you're going to remain virtual forever? Or are you going to try in the future to again engage in a blended approach so that you can, you know, partially do some trainings online or some clients online, and those who want to come in person, there will be an in-person aspect? I'm going to give that a few seconds. I see the results coming in already. Thank you for the over 55 people who have voted.
I'll give it about 5 more seconds here. Okay, let's go ahead and share results.
Thanks, Brittany. All right, so it looks like some of you guys are trying to go back to person as soon as possible. That's about 10 of you guys, so that might be the 10 of you guys who are 100% in person already. But it looks like the majority of people are, over 54 of you guys are looking to engage in a blended approach in the foreseeable future. I'm so glad you're on that same page, because that is a culture change, right? That is something that we actively have to choose and want for our future and our organizations. So one thing to think about is that if you are bought into that kind of virtual blended approach, not everyone might be, and this might be a very big challenge for them. So if this is something you're like super excited about, make sure you're also helping your organization culturally adapt to the future of blended learning. So if you're already on that front curve, make sure you're continuing to bring your organization forward. And if you are more reluctant about this being a blended approach as you're going forward, hopefully this presentation will help you kind of think about ways that you can feel empowered during this transition and see the benefits of it as we're moving through this post-COVID space. And I see one of you guys are remaining virtually forever. To that one individual, way to go. Let us know what you've learned. You're going to do one of the next presentations for us. All right, we're going to continue on. Let me X that out. So now that we've talked about kind of reframing our brains and thinking about not only where we are now, but where we are in the future and how we are directing our services and our organizations. Now we know that we're going to have a blended learning environment in the future, whether we like it or not. So upskilling in a virtual world is going to be a skill we have to adapt to and have to take on. So how do we first bridge the virtual learning gap? You guys talked about how it can be challenging for some of our clients to take it on. So let's look at what kind of our participants went through, like our clients went through. When this pandemic started, they were all doing kind of guided in-person learning, whether that was one-on-one in-person coaching or whether that was group coaching. This is something that they, whether that's school, this is all that they had participated in, unless they were doing like an online high school or an online college. Then during the pandemic, they were suddenly forced to become independent learners. And whether they consciously knew about it or we consciously knew that we were trying to help them do this, becoming an independent learner is required to master kind of online training and master participating online and master actually continuing motivation throughout a training program. So finally, if we are able to successfully get through this challenge, and we'll talk about those rings and kind of what they represent as we move forward, they are going to have enhanced performance in a virtual environment, which is a great opportunity because, like we said, blended learning is going to happen for all of our organizations. Now, if we expand that a little bit farther and think about our employers, the employers are going to continue to have a blended learning approach as well. So the enhanced virtual performance is not only necessary to pivot because of COVID-19, but as a long-term skill set that will make our candidates and clients more competitive in the long run. All right, so kind of what I want to see now is going to be a question for you guys again in the chat. What do people need to become effective, and what do they need to become independent virtual learners? What are those like skill sets or resources that we need to be considering when working with our clients to make sure they have what they need? What are those skill sets? What are those things? Time management. Yes, absolutely. Right? How do I make sure that this hour that I've set aside stays set aside? What other skills do we need to effectively be virtual learners? You need to have actual personal goals that align with what you're doing. Yep, being on time. Absolutely, that's a huge skill. It's hard even when you're commuting, but somehow even when you're not commuting, it's difficult. It definitely is. Computer basics. Yep. Do I know how to turn on a computer? Do I know how to go to a browser? Do I know how to download a Zoom app, for the computer? Communication skills. Yes, in a virtual environment, right? How much more gesturing am I doing when I'm here versus when I'm in person? And where are those gestures and how does my facial expression come across? Self-discipline. Yes. Can I just continue on when nobody's on my back? Discipline and focus. Yep, similar theme. All right. A designated space to work. Yeah, this was actually new even for me, right? I don't know about you guys, but when we transitioned virtually, I was at my kitchen table because I was like, oh, it's a few months. And then long story short, I realized like, wow, all of my dinners, all of my lunches are at the same place where I'm eating. And it actually distracts me long term. So having to get an actual space to work was a huge deal for me, much less for our participants. Self-determination and discipline. Guidance and support from us. Tanil, yeah, but go for it.
Yeah, no, there was one in the question answer about guidance and support. So yeah, this is something that they're going to need extra support from their trainers, from their case managers, just those all around wraparound supports.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that we think about with digital literacy is I've had to spend extra time with them, out of our trainings to sit down and say, okay, here's how you download the app. Here's what you need to remove from your computer in order for it to run effectively. Here's how you set up your camera so that we can see you well. That guidance and support is going to be critical because people don't spend time giving that feedback, and it is critical. A willingness to learn, consistent follow-up. Yes, Jackie, absolutely, especially virtually. Good Wi-Fi and the ability to troubleshoot everything. Absolutely. Being present, excellent internet connection. Yes, we'll talk about a little trick for that for us later today. Minimizing distractions. Emotional intelligence on when people are getting burnt out from screen time, utilizing self-knowledge on how to schedule home life and work life better. Absolutely. So kind of us reading the room, like, are people actually engaged right now? How can I engage them? We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And listening skills, ready to show and speak at the same time. Yeah, getting on camera is a vulnerability. So, and you're going to see my home and where I am. So that is also very crucial as well. If you guys hear some noise in the background, my AC is very loud, so that's what's going on. An ability to believe that they can. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said reframing our narrative is just as important, because we're going to help them reframe their narrative, that this is not some sort of obstacle, this is actually an opportunity, and we have to show them step by step that growth. So thank you. You guys actually touched on a lot. So we talked about kind of that trajectory that people had to go through. So our goal is to make that independent learning fully supported. That circle is us. And here's kind of the pillars, the 5 pillars for being an independent learner. The first one you guys covered is that access to technology. So access to a computer, reliable Wi-Fi, experience with e-learning platforms if they're doing things like a chat or if they're doing like a Canvas, and charging capabilities and accessibility. I can't tell you how many times my participants are on the training and then their phone dies, right? It happens all the time. So helping them kind of recognize that that is part of their access and what they need to become an independent learner. The environment conductive to learning, you guys covered that, right? Where is my office space? An environment that's free from distractions. And of course, this comes into play. Support services to assist with childcare and proper educational materials may be necessary, right? Even if my kids are doing e-learning and they're kind of distracted over there, if they need my support all the time, I might not be able to participate in this training 100% because I'll be called away a million times and actually lose the learning I was supposed to get from that training. So an environment conductive to learning, self-sustained motivation, sustained self-motivation. This is really critical because you guys talked about it. Personal goals need to be related, and that discipline. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And that self-sustained motivation is a successful independent learner needs to be able to see the value of that program. We're going to talk a little bit more in a couple of slides about what role do we play in helping our participants have sustained motivation. But for right now, just put it in your brain. That's something I need to help these people get access to and help them, not get access to, but help them engage that part of themselves so that they can become better, effective, independent learners. Commit to showing up every day and learning, asking questions. That's a whole new skill, right? Asking questions online when I can just be like, I'm not going to put anything in the chat. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm not going to raise my hand, right? So it's also how do we facilitate to help those people get comfortable raising their hands, participating. Advocating for the help they might need, right? So if you got logged off and you couldn't figure it out, who do they need to email? Do they know who they need to contact when something happens, they can't figure it out? And yes, you will get the links to these slides. Absolutely. I know Tanil's also answering that question, but you will absolutely get the links to these slides, and hopefully you'll be able to post it somewhere. I tried to make them pretty. All right, accountability and mentoring. You guys covered this. Time management, organizational skills, can troubleshoot and independently resolve issues, right? Can troubleshoot ... everything. I forgot who put that there, but that is exactly 100% what it is. And I see some of you guys are raising your hands. If you have questions, can you put it in the chat so I can see it? Because I can't unmute you guys right now. So if you can put your questions in the chat, that would be great. And otherwise we will have time for questions at the end, but if you can drop your questions in the chat, I will be answering them throughout, or Tanil or Mike. And so, yeah, if you see Tanil, she's the chat guru for today, so she might be sending you little questions and answers there. So accountability and monitoring is a skill set that needs to be learned. And finally, we have support and assistance. So this means providing additional mentoring and tutoring support as we need to become an independent learner. So sometimes we might need like additional support to understand how to use Canvas or Blackboard or whatever the online education tool is. Sometimes we need additional support to learn how do we use Zoom or how do we use Teams, and how can we, you know, make this a safe space to provide that additional support and actually put that into our calendars, right? Sometimes we're like, I'm doing training from 10 to 12, but we don't think about the extra 30 minutes of questions that people are going to have when they have to jump off, or something goes wrong, or they didn't understand the email that you sent out. So planning in that additional time is key. So we're going to talk about solutions to that. But before we talk about solutions, I would really love, Brittany, if we could launch the poll where it asks about which of these areas is the biggest challenge for you. I want to know kind of what is that biggest challenge for you? Which one's not going as well right now? And I see it's just launched. I'm seeing some answers come through. We'll give that a few seconds, and I will take a sip of water. Let's see some of the questions. Yes, you'll be able to access the slides and recordings at that link within 48 hours. Perfect. Yes, Janice, thank you. And Jarrell, thank you. And Felicia, thank you so much. I'm glad this is useful for you guys. We're going to get this.
And I do want to recognize, Nicole, Mel does have their hand still raised. If you want to throw something in the chat or in the question answer session, I will look at that and make sure we get that to Nicole. Even if it's a comment, we can do that as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, we'll give it 5 more seconds.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close it and share our results.
Wonderful. So as you guys can see, one of the biggest challenges for 38% of you is sustained self-motivation. I'm really excited. There's one really good slide that I think will be very helpful for that. So we're going to go deeper into that one. Then 26% of you guys are talking about access to technology and equipment. And let's see, 14% environment conductive to learning, and 5% support and assistance. All right, we're providing support and assistance. We can do that day in and day out. So we really want to dive deeper today into that self-sustained motivation and kind of access to technology, and, you know, somewhere in the back burner thinking about conductive learning and accountability. Perfect. This is a normal thing, right? Self-sustaining motivation is an incredibly difficult thing to help people with. So we're going to continue on, and we're going to talk about some of the solutions for each of these pillars. And if you guys like this slide, I think you'll like the next slide. So how do we actually support independent learners within each of these spaces? We have the access to technology, right? For this one, you really want to provide assistance to navigate access to Wi-Fi and potentially access to a low-cost computer. If your organization has the funds or the abilities to support people with just a regular Chromebook, that's going to go a long way to helping a participant stay engaged during this transition. There's also built-in training time around normalizing and getting familiar with online learning and online engagement. You guys know, when you're doing a training, usually you put in time to say, hey, here are the rules of engagement, here, what are kind of the norms we want to think about. But we have to also put in time now for what are the norms for the digital space, but also what are the skills we need to engage. So I might spend some extra time with participants showing them how to engage in the chat, or I might put some additional slides together showing them how to go from gallery view to panel view so that they can see, from participant so that they can see gallery, not speaker view. So if we're looking at the gallery, they can see a bunch of their peers rather than just seeing my face. And it's just a lot more engaging when they can see everyone. There actually needs to be time built into your curriculum at minimum 30 minutes at the beginning of a training to help with this onboarding. So make sure that you are helping with that onboarding, but also if possible, helping them earn money, whether that's through participating or doing something so they can get access to a computer or at least participate on their phone. The next one is kind of an environment conductive to learning. This is environmental factor. So one of the things we do to make sure this goes well is an environmental factor assessment that we provide during the screening process. I'm going to go deeper into that in a later slide, but this has actually been really important. I'm sure you guys have done some sort of pre-screener for your services before to make sure that they're a right fit for your program, whether that's because of grant requirements or WIOA requirements. But the really key big thing here is we also need to add in some additional screening for what is their environment right now. So you know where they are now, so you know where you need to get them to so they can be successful independent learners. We also need to engage family to garner buy-in. This is a big one. If they're going to be at home, the people are going to be like, hey, you're right there, just help me out with dinner. Hey, you're right there, help me out with the kids. Hey, you're right there, like we should just be able to talk, right? No, when I'm here, even though I'm in my space and in my house, I am actually here in this space. And so it's learning and engaging the family in that buy-in as well. Set aside a space to focus and critically think. And once back in the office, provide space in a computer lab on the south side or wherever they are, wherever your community is, for that kind of support. The self-sustained motivation, and we'll go a little bit, yeah, go Mike.
Sorry, Nicole. It looks like Jacqueline has her hand up. Jacqueline, if you want to put your question in the chat, we can answer that for you right away. And so does Monica Lowe. So yeah, if you all want to put your questions in the chat, we'll get to them right away.
I love that everyone's using the hand raise feature though. That's great. Self-sustained motivation. I'm going to go through a couple of these a little bit quicker. I want to make sure we get through everything today. So we want to establish some routines. Routines are a big thing. If your routines are not consistently set up for digital learning, you want to set up repeated things that you do every single time during your one-on-one so they can adapt and get into some normalcy and consistency. You want to build habits of checking in and asking questions during the recruiting process to test the capabilities. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And create rewards and external incentives. So incentives are a huge thing, right? If I participate, what do I get from it? And I think this is important. I mean, just like I hope that by the end of this, you know what you're going to get from this. You're going to understand more upskilling. You're going to have a summary of it. You're going to have some troubleshooting ideas. They need to know what's in it for them. And right now, financials are a pretty big portion of that. Accountability and mentoring. We want to talk about virtual study groups. Okay, this has actually been very successful. Like a lot of the youth participants, especially, are already online in like a GroupMe or a Slack. So thinking about that. And the buddy system for improvement, have them have someone who they report to that's not you, that they can text easily, so it's a little bit lower stakes. Block scheduling is required along with a calendar of assignments and due dates. This is very important because there is so much that goes along with understanding what you need to do. And especially in a virtual environment, it's hard to keep everyone on the same page. I highly recommend using Canva. Canva is like an online platform where you can create like really pretty like worksheets. And it's just something that can get everyone on the same page. But this is something to think about as a program manager or as an individual who works with clients. And then support and assistance. This would be an academic coach for in between, structuring check-in points, weekly review of the block scheduling. Hey, this is what we're going to do next week. Hey, this is what you should expect the following week. And include courses on prioritization, proper note-taking, research, time management, professional communication. Now this is a skill that you need to think about and you need to learn as you're moving forward in this space. So we talked about motivation and self-direction. How can you actually encourage people to persist? This is a really cool thing. Okay, so this is from research done from the book, How Kids Learn Resilience, right? And we can think about this with our programs. So you can encourage people to persist by showing them how what they're about to do is going to help them grow in competence as a result of their efforts. If you do this, this is what's going to come out. So help them make that connection. Don't just tell them what to do. Help them make the connection of what they're going to get and how they're going to grow from it. Additionally, their work having value and mattering in their lives, right? Sometimes we just get told, do this, fill out that, and you just kind of get numb to whatever is going on. So of course you're not motivated. So if they see why this has value and why this matters to them and what they value, right? Not what we value, we know what we want for them, but do they know why this is a value to them and why this matters? Like I always think about myself as a sales coach, right? Half the time I'm just selling my programs. because they need to make that choice. Speaking of autonomy and choice, right? They need to be able to be the ones that say, I'm going to do this and here's why. Ultimately, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so this is included in the digital age. How can you give them the autonomy of choice? Sometimes what I recommend in this case is don't just give them one option, but say, hey, I understand that you have a couple of things going on. So would this or would this one be easier? Both are good options, but this way they feel like they have a little bit more of a flexibility to make a choice. And then belonging and personal connection. This is really important, especially in the digital divide right now. I'm not with people all the time, so creating space in our trainings as well as in our one-on-one coachings for them to just, like, usually I'd say if it's in a one-on-one coaching session, give them 5 minutes just to vent and talk about themselves and their personal lives, and then get to business. Give them some space to be themselves and talk about that being a space. Give them those 5 minutes and say, okay, great, it's been so great to catch up with you. Let's talk about what we're doing today, right? Transition them and give them that space to be themselves. And of course, that bonus is that performance-based stipend or incentive. Performance-based being key, because if I can get away with it and just be at home and do nothing, I will. That's a smart thing to do, whether we like it or not. So we need to make sure it's linked to performance-based incentives. I know that was a lot. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat yet, but if you guys have any questions about those slides, let me know. Otherwise, we're moving on to kind of like how can we consider program and training prep considerations for virtual training. Again, if you have any questions, drop it in the chat. I see a few people still have their hand raised, so make sure you ask those questions in the chat. Perfect. Let's keep going. How do we adjust intakes and recruiting for our programs based on the virtual training gap? Hint, I already gave you one of them that I recommended. If you were listening, if it was on the slide, what kind of other adjustments have you made to your recruiting process that would make you, think about and adjust to that virtual training gap? What have you done to adjust your programs or your coaching? Drop it in the chat.
So I did hear, as we were waiting for responses in the chat, I did remember seeing someone type earlier, retrieving documents through Adobe Sign. I don't know if that prompts anyone to think about, ways that you've adjusted your intake or recruitment process during this pandemic. Okay. Email blast with Zoom.
Ooh, instructions in English and in Spanish. Very cool. Moved our application and explanation of the process to our website. Yes, absolutely. So it's easy to look at. Flexibility on intake days, great.
And Nicole, I know you did a lot of work around even today, where you talked about the differences between the cell phone versus being on your laptop. I know you've always spoke about how that makes a big difference, especially with youth participation and a lot of our youth using their cell phones on these trainings as opposed to a computer.
Absolutely. So being flexible with what kind of digital product people can engage with us on. So, and there's another couple of things I want you guys to think about, right? Something that's been very effective for us has been increasing the number of participants accepted into a program, because we know that fall off is still going to be, maybe three, I'd say out of 27, 3 or 4 of those people are going to fall off for one reason or another. So increase the number of participants so you can get to your baseline. There's a lot less risk then for you guys as well as them if they fall off. So I highly recommend doing that. Also start with a virtual informational session. What's the point of this, right? They're like, why do I need to do that? But it is actually important because you can see how they engage, how they show up online, how they interact in the chat. And it also gives them a chance to practice. So let's say it's 10 o'clock and they're supposed to log on. Next thing you know, they have to go through a bunch of steps. They didn't realize it's Zoom. They're going to be 5 to 10 minutes late trying to figure that out. But if it's for an info session, there is that grace and that space you can create for them. So it's good for them and it's good for us because it gives us a chance to get to know them. Also, motivational interviewing, like we talked about, self-motivation. If we include that in our interviewing process, it'll help us understand what continues to motivate them as they go along. So it's asking them, why are you interested in participating in this program? What's kind of a greatest accomplishment you've had that we can continue to help you with, or that this kind of relates to? What's your ultimate goal long-term? So we want to think about what are those motivations during the process. And then environmental assessment, I'm going to go into that on the next slide a little bit more. And then Calendly scheduling. If you haven't used Calendly, I highly recommend it. I'll show you guys a little bit of it, but they have a text messaging service for reminders with their like upgraded plan. So if your office can invest in it, it's actually been very effective for helping our participants show up. And I also see Jennifer said our office requires individual registrations for everything, so that we can generate a contact list. Yep, contact list, email lists. Now we're suddenly marketers, right? So an environmental assessment, what is it? Let's go deeper. You need to know before you start a training and before, like as you're recruiting, what access to technology do they have? What video, audio, and microphone capabilities do they have? A description of their workspace so they think about it, but also you know what it is. And of course, asking about English fluency, because when we were in person, it was a little bit easier to kind of adjust. But now that we're virtual, it's even harder to maybe like bridge those difficulty of understanding. So you need to know whether you need to talk slower, or you might need to give them some prompts in Spanish or in another language for whichever agency you're working with. So an example of what we might ask is on the left is, which of the following will you be using to attend the training and complete work for your employer? And smartphone, tablet, Chromebook, laptop, desktop, you know, thinking about what they might actually use. Because like Mike said, we need to adjust how we talk about the instructions based on how they're engaging. The next thing is kind of exploring Calendly. I'm not going to go into this too much, but maybe with 1 minute of time, I'm going to show you guys really quick, because this is very cool. So Calendly. All right, so Calendly works like this. If you haven't seen it before, you can log in, you can put your logo here on the left side. For example, this is for volunteers. Right now, we only have one option open. So I might go here and I might confirm, and then you can put in whatever information you need there. But I can also, for example, we do one-on-one coaching for some of our CBO clients. If a client wants to come in and schedule themselves, they can click and it'll open the times that are available on the person's Outlook calendar. So you don't need to update this manually. This updates automatically with what's on the Outlook. And then here's just some customization that's really cool to think about. You can customize what you write, the links, the colors, when can people book it, for how long, buffer time for your own. This is also cool. You can have a full team of people. It can do like a round robin. So if you want to equally distribute who signs up for one-on-one coaching and who it goes to, you can have a team kind of event, and then you can choose who's on that team. You can also add up to 10 questions. There's email reminders. This is my favorite part. You can like customize this with like pre-filled fields. I use this all the time. It's very, very helpful. They have an email cancellation, email reminders. Same thing, you can customize it completely and put how many like hours, minutes, or whatever you want a reminder to go out. And then the text message one. I didn't do that for this one, but it's just a simple reminder. You can customize this as well, and you can customize how many times when you want them to get a text message, which again, I find very effective for our participants. But it just saves a lot of time to be able to do that. So I recommend that you do that in the future as well. So we are coming up almost to the end. I know we're blasting through a lot of this. In the chat, I'd love to see if you've used Calendly before as well, just so I can see how many people are using Calendly. And then during the program, there's a couple of things I want you to think about. You want to add an admin person, right? This is the person who's going to help you with technical challenges as you're going through. Tanil's making sure that everyone in the chat is taken care of. Mike's making sure in case I like get blasted off the internet that he can actually step in. But also during all of our trainings, we have an admin person taking attendance, helping people troubleshoot things. They're calling people in the background saying, hey, I saw you jumped off. Like, how can I help you get back on? Or they're checking the inbox to see if anyone emailed with issues, right? That admin person is critical so you can focus on training and client management while they are taking care of the administrative things. You also want to provide a safe space and time to learn and practice digital literacy. We talked about that. That needs to be scheduled into your time as an upskilling thing. create accountability metrics, training, and this last part, training is engaging, not talking. So we have done our best to use polls, chats, not breakout rooms for webinars, but for your own trainings. You want to call on participants. So if I could see you guys, I'd be like, Cassandra, I saw you put something in the chat. Can you share a little bit more, right? Call on people so they feel more comfortable. Ask people to raise their hands or nod. Ask for volunteers. Like anything you can do to keep them engaged and show them that you're trying to talk to them is great. And of course, leading by example. You want to utilize the entire platform. You want to understand how to guide the participants for what they see. So if you don't know, log onto your phone, start a training, log onto your phone and see how it works. Get an Ethernet cord. Okay, this is life-changing. I know this is stupid, but like getting an Ethernet cord that actually plugs into your computer and plugs into your router so you're not having internet issues unless the entire thing is down is awesome. It's life-changing for me. I never have to worry about my internet going down anymore. Create a professional background on Zoom. I'm in my kitchen. You don't know that, right? So I always recommend it. Create some more privacy for you. And you can make that on Canva. Unmute yourself when speaking or not speaking so you can show them how they're supposed to interact. And of course, don't wing it. This is the biggest thing. When we were in person, we could just jump into a room and say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to put it on the whiteboard, right? Online is not the same. So if you've been struggling or things have kind of been a little choppy, think about 2 hours of prep for every 1 hour of training that you're doing. And you want to have the exact slides you're doing, visuals, exercises, questions, polls, chat questions. You want to have that all prepared so people feel good and taken care of. I know that was a lot, especially during that last part. So speaking of the not talking as much as engaging, it is time for questions. I will also stay on a little bit later if we need to. But any questions that you have, put in the chat, or Brittany might be able to facilitate some people answering questions. Let's see. When and where will we be? Yep, we said the access, great. Just a reminder, if you are recording the training and you're the host, you cannot mute yourself, otherwise the recording gets muted too. That's a great reminder, right? So if I'm recording the meeting, if I mute it, nobody's going to hear anything. Great. Guidance and support from us. Angela, I'm not sure. Oh, maybe you meant that as a comment. Okay, great. What other questions do we have around? I guess if we don't have any questions, I'll wait for questions. But if we don't have any questions, what was kind of like the most useful tip or trick that you're going to consider trying to implement in the next, 2 weeks or so into your trainings? Any tips or tricks or kind of competencies that you're really going to focus on over the next 2 weeks for your clients or participants?
Nicole, we have a question in the question and answer section. An anonymous attendee said, just curious, do you use Canva for some of the great slides featured in this training?
No, I did not use Canva for these, though I have used Canva for presentations. The only challenge is that when you download it and put it into PowerPoint, sometimes the formatting gets messed up, but Tanil might have an answer for some of these kind of core slides.
So Nicole did definitely change quite and adapted quite a few of the slides, but some of these slides we've used before. We actually use Slide Model Pro. And so we get a subscription and we use throughout the organization, and it has some really great templates and they're all completely customizable. So you can start when you have an idea, you put some keywords into the chat, and I'll put it in the chat, the link, but you put some keywords of things you're thinking. Are you thinking flow charts? Are you thinking that you want org charts? Are you thinking process models? And it will give you a bunch of templates that have infographics and all kinds of things that you can completely customize. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, if you can put that in the chat, that would be super helpful, because I think that's a really good resource. Obviously, what I do is I take that model and then I think about what we're presenting and adjust it and move it around. And I also, a lot of the animations, I think about how do I introduce one informational topic at a time, and then have the animations match that so we aren't overwhelming people with all of the content at once, because then they don't know what to focus their eyes on. Think about you demanding their attention and kind of taking them through that process. So same thing that we did here, think about that for your presentations. But yes, I use Canva as well. And Slide Model is a great one too that you can then download and customize. Great. Well, if there are no further questions, I really appreciate everyone's time. I see a couple of people had to run off. Thank you so much for your time and engagement today. It's been a pleasure being able to talk more about training online. Anything that I can help with, feel free to connect on LinkedIn or email us. Our emails are in the slide deck, and hopefully this will be a great resource for you. Yes, and don't forget to sign up for the next session.
Yeah, and I did just want to mention real quickly, I put in the chat there a link for the presentation survey, which you'll also be getting that in a follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow, as well as the link for the upcoming webinars, the recordings, and all the material that was shared today. And again, the recording will be posted within 48 hours of the live webinar. So all of that information is in the chat, but will also be sent in that follow-up email. So we make sure that you have access to it in every avenue.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
It does look like there was one question in the chat that Brittany may want to answer offline about receiving a copy of the entire transcript from the closed captioning. But no, thank you, everyone. This is great.
Yes, and I do apologize for the sporadic closed captioning. The recording itself, we will upload to YouTube, and we'll have the closed captioning fully on the recorded version of the webinar as well. So that will be made available on our website also. So thank you guys for participating, and thank you to our presenters for an amazing webinar, and have a wonderful rest of your workday.
Bye, thank you.